My wife's cheating with her boss was just the start of a much bigger betrayal. Hey, my name's Ryan, and I'm 34. I've always tried to be pretty understanding. Me and Emily got married like 7 years ago, and we've always worked as a team. You know, she's ambitious, smart, and determined to make it in her marketing career at one of the big companies in the city. It wasn't easy, but I was there for her through all the long hours and late nights and stress that comes with climbing the corporate ladder. We thought we were both heading towards a better future together. But then things started to change. Emily started working closely with this guy, Michael, her boss. He's in his 40s and has all this wealth and power and influence. Just being around him makes people feel small. Emily would get home later than usual, and every time I'd ask her about it, she'd give me the same line. "It's all about my career, man. You know how cutthroat the industry can be," she'd say. I understood that she wanted to succeed, but I also had a bad feeling about it. I wanted to know more about her relationship with Michael, but she wouldn't talk about it much. So I did some digging on my own. Turns out Michael has a reputation for being a tough boss. He's known for making employees work crazy hours and loading them with more work than they can handle. It made me worry about Emily's well-being, so I asked her if she thought about rethinking her priorities. She told me she was okay and still loved me, but I could tell something had changed. So I decided to have a chat with Michael and tell him my concerns. He agreed to meet, and we had an honest talk about his expectations for Emily. He admitted he'd been pushing her a bit too hard and promised to back off. He also said he'd help her look for a new job at the company that better suited her skills. I still have my doubts about things, but I trust Emily's judgment. I know she knows what's best for her. We might face some challenges, but I think we can get through them together. I tried to be cool and reminded myself that she was doing it for us, but the more time went by, the more uneasy I felt. All these late-night texts, those sudden business trips she kept going on about, and her whole new style of dressing, it all pointed to something that I didn't want to think about. One night, I just couldn't take it anymore. I confronted her, and we sat at the dinner table, the silence heavier than ever. "Emily," I started in a soft voice, "there's something going on between you and Michael, isn't there?" She paused, fork in the air, not saying anything for a second. Then she put down the fork and sighed. "Ryan," she said, in an unnaturally calm voice, "you have to understand. In this industry, we women have to make sacrifices if we want to achieve our goals." "Sacrifices?" I asked, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. She continued, still in that calm tone. "Sometimes we have to put our personal lives on hold to focus on our work. It's part of the game." I was still confused, but I could see the pain in her eyes. "But why can't we just talk about it?" I asked. Emily sighed again and said, "Because sometimes the truth is too painful to hear." And with that, she got up from the table and left the room. I sat there, feeling more lost than ever. She nodded, her eyes begging me. "Ryan, he's helping me out. He's opening doors that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But in order to keep those doors open, I have to do some things I don't really want to do. It's for my career and for us, you know?" My heart sank. "Are you saying you're seeing him?" I asked, feeling hurt. She paused, looking at her food like she was ashamed. "It's not that," she said softly. "It's just business. Surviving in this industry, you know? Getting ahead." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I loved and trusted was admitting to cheating. And even worse, she was making excuses for it, saying it was all for her career. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "A few months," she admitted. "Please understand." I stood up from the table, hands trembling with anger. "I don't want to understand anything right now." I snapped at Emily. "You cheated on me, and you expect me just to accept it because it's for your career?" She stood up too, a mix of guilt and frustration on her face. "Do you think this is what I want? Do you think it's easy for me either?" she asked back. "I'm just trying to do what I think is best for us in the long run." "Us," I replied. "What are we even talking about here? A future with you and your boss? A life without me?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. "I know you can't see it right now, Ryan, but you have to trust me." And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I hardly recognized, someone willing to sacrifice everything for her job. I barely slept that night because the words Emily said kept echoing in my head. "I need you to understand," she said. How could she say that? How could she think I'd just sit back while our marriage fell apart for her job? The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. Emily was already gone for work, leaving me alone to face her betrayal. I sat there, staring at her empty chair, trying to figure out what happened. I was lost and confused. My mind was racing with questions, but I had no answers. Jason, my best friend, was my only hope. We'd known each other for ages, and he'd always been there for me. If there was anyone who could help me understand this, it was him. That afternoon, we went to a local bar to meet up. As soon as I saw him, I knew I had to talk to him. "How's it going?" he asked, with concern on his face. I took a seat and explained everything that had happened. He listened intently, offering advice and support. Together, we worked to solve the problem and come up with a plan. It was tough, but thanks to his help, I started to see things more clearly. I realized that Emily needed to make her own choices, and it was best for both of us if I focused on my own well-being and our relationship. Even though it wasn't easy, it helped me move forward. "Man, I don't know where to start," I said, running my hands through my hair. Jason just said, "Take your time." He signaled to the bartender for some drinks. I hesitated for a second, not sure how to explain everything, but then I just blurted it all out. I told him about Emily, Michael, and their affair, as well as her attempts to make it seem like it was necessary for her career. By the time I was done, Jason looked like he was ready to punch a table. "Are you kidding me?" he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Did she really say that? Does she really expect you to just accept it?" I nodded, feeling my anger rise again. "Yeah, she acts like it's no big deal. Like I should just roll over and accept it because of her job." Jason took a long swig of his beer and set the bottle down firmly on the table. "Ryan, this is cheating. She might try to spin it any way she wants, but that's exactly what it is." "I know," I said quietly, staring at my drink. "But what am I supposed to do? I love her and don't want to lose her." Jason leaned back in his chair. His expression softened. "I understand how you feel. You love her, and it's tough to let go. But you can't stay in a relationship where cheating is acceptable no matter the reason. You deserve better." His words hit me like a ton of bricks, but I knew he was right. I couldn't go on living like that, always wondering if my partner was cheating or if they were just using their boss for career advancement. After a pause, Jason continued, "So, have you talked to them about how you're feeling? I mean, really sat down and talked without fighting?" I shook my head. "Not really. Our last chat wasn't exactly calm." "Well, then you need to have a proper discussion with them," Jason said firmly. "You've got the right to know how they feel, and they need to decide if they want to fix things or not." That night, I waited for Emily to get home, thinking about everything Jason had said. When she finally arrived, she looked tired, but her eyes were bright. I decided it was time to talk. "We need to sort this out," I said when she put down her bag. She sighed. "Ryan, I'm not in the mood to argue." I tried my best to stay calm and asked, "So, are you still seeing that guy?" She paused and then said, "Yeah, I told you before why. I just can't get over it," I said. "Our relationship is important to me, and I want to work it out." She nodded, saying that she understood, but she still wanted to see Michael sometimes. I was feeling lost and didn't know what to say next. "It's not about getting your approval," she softly said. "I just need you to understand this is where I am right now and what I need to do. I know it could be different, but it's not. If I don't do this, everything I worked for could be gone. My career, our future, everything." As she said that, my heart hurt. I knew she wasn't giving up on me. She hadn't chosen work over me. "So what do we do? Should we just pretend everything's okay? That our marriage is still strong?" Emily looked at me, tears in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. She didn't have an answer. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't the only one facing a hard decision. The next few days were a complete nightmare for me. I barely spoke to Emily, and when I did, there was so much tension between us. It was like we were two strangers sharing the same house, pretending everything was fine on the outside. But inside, Everything was falling apart. I kept replaying Jason's words over and over in my head. You deserve better. But did I really? Was this what marriage was really about? Sacrifice and compromise? I never thought my life would become such an emotional mess. That weekend, I decided to have a talk with Michael. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe some closure, maybe some answers. But I knew I had to face the person destroying my marriage. I knew where his office was. So Monday morning, before Emily even left for work, I headed over to the tall building. It was all glass and steel, shining in the morning sun. As I walked in, I felt bitter. This was his empire. This was the world Emily wanted so badly to be a part of. I found his office on the top floor, sleek and modern with all the trappings of corporate success. His assistant, a young lady, barely looked up when I approached her desk. "Sorry," she said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, trying to stay calm, "but he's going to want to see me anyway." She raised an eyebrow, not believing me. "Who are you again?" she asked. I said my name, Ryan, and that I was Emily's husband, which seemed to catch her attention. She looked at me in surprise and picked up the phone, whispering something to Michael. After a moment, she hung up and motioned for me to go into his office. "Come on in," she said softly. I walked into the office, my heart racing. Michael was behind his desk, wearing an impeccable suit, with the kind of confident aura that only people in positions of power seem to have. He glanced up from his paperwork and gave me a cool smile, almost like he was amused. "Ryan," he greeted me smoothly, like we were old buddies. "Didn't expect to see you here. Can I help you?" I felt anger bubbling up, but I tried to stay calm. "You know why I'm here," I said. He leaned back, his face unreadable. "It's about Emily, I assume." "Damn right it is about Emily," I snapped. "You and my wife are sleeping together under the guise of helping her career. You're taking advantage of her, manipulating her, and I want you to stop." Michael didn't even blink an eye. In fact, he seemed to be more amused by my rant. "Ryan, I know you're upset," he said calmly in that patronizing way of his, "but you're making it all seem so simple. Emily's a grown woman, and she makes her own decisions. No one's forcing her to do anything." His calmness just made me more angry. "You've convinced her she needs you to succeed. You've made her think this affair is a part of climbing the corporate ladder. But that's not true. You don't have control over her." Michael chuckled softly and shook his head. "Don't give me too much credit. Emily's own success is hers. I just provide opportunities. If she chooses to take them, that's her decision, not mine." I stared at him, fists tight at my sides. "So, did you ruin my marriage?" He raised an eyebrow. "Me." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach, but deep down I knew there was truth to what he was saying. It had been a while since things between Emily and me were perfect, and her long hours, distance, and constant stress from her job had taken its toll. Maybe her affair wasn't the cause. It was just the final straw. But that didn't mean Michael was off the hook. "You've played her like a fiddle," I said, my voice shaking with anger and sadness. "Used her ambition against her." Michael stood up and came around the desk to stand in front of me. I wasn't expecting him to be so tall, and for a second, I felt a bit intimidated. He gave me a condescending look and said, "Ryan, let me give you some advice. In the corporate world, people have to do whatever it takes to get ahead. Emily's one of the brightest and most driven women I know, but if you want to be with her, you have to understand that her work will always come first." I was taken aback by what he said. It felt like he was saying that people in the business world were willing to sacrifice their values and relationships in order to succeed. I wanted to tell him off, punch him in the face, and wipe that smug look off his face. But I knew it wouldn't do any good. He was right about one thing, though. Emily was a grown-up who made her own decisions, and I had to respect that. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. "That's it, that's all," I said firmly. "I don't care how much power you think you have over my wife. She's mine, and I won't let you destroy our marriage." Michael just smirked and shrugged like the whole thing didn't matter to him. "You'll see," he said. I turned and left his office, my head spinning with thoughts. When I got out of the building, I was feeling a weird mix of relief and fear. I'd stood up to Michael, but it hadn't really changed anything. Emily was still caught in the middle, and I had to face the truth that maybe, just maybe, our marriage wasn't going to work out. When I got home that night, Emily was sitting on the couch waiting for me. She looked unsure, her eyes full of questions. "Where have you been?" she asked softly. "I went to see Michael," I answered, my voice sounding tired and exhausted. Her eyes went wide with surprise, and for the first time in a while, a flicker of fear crossed her face. "What did you say to him?" "I told him it had to be over," I said, taking a seat across from her. I can't do this anymore. I can't fake it when it's not working out. You need to choose. It's him or me." Emily stared at me, her face white with shock. It was silent for a long moment, only the soft tick of the clock breaking the silence. Each second seemed to last forever. I'd just given her an ultimatum, and now we were both facing the consequences. "I can't believe you went and saw him," she finally said, her voice barely more than a whisper. I tried to keep my voice steady. I had to, "You weren't telling me anything, so I figured he would. He's the one who knows what's going on." She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "And what did you think you'd get out of it? Do you think Michael cares about us?" "He doesn't. I know he doesn't." I admitted, "Yeah, I know. But I do. That's why I did it." Emily's face softened, and for the first time in a while, I saw the woman I married, vulnerable, torn between her ambition and love for me. She sat back on the couch and pulled her knees up to her chest, like she was trying to protect herself from the tough reality. "Ryan, She paused, searching for the right words. "You can't understand how it feels. The pressure, always worrying that if I miss an opportunity, someone else will take it. Michael, he's more than just some guy. He's the key to everything I've worked for," I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. "What about me, Em? What about us? I've always been here for you, putting myself last so you could chase your dreams. But lately I'm wondering, where do I fit in? Where do we fit as a couple?" She didn't respond, but her silence said it all. I took a deep breath and tried to gather my thoughts. "I gave you everything I had. I was there for you through all the late nights and canceled plans. But I can't watch you let someone else come between us. I don't want this to be okay," I said, tears welling up in my eyes, but I quickly blinked them away. "I don't know what to do, Ryan. It wasn't supposed to happen, but now that it has, I feel trapped." "Please stop," I continued, reaching out to him. "End it. Leave him. Leave it all behind. We can fix our relationship if you want. You can't have both Emily and Michael." She looked at me, desperation and fear shining in her eyes. It was like she couldn't bear the thought of losing her career or all the power and prestige that went with it. "If I leave Michael, I'll lose everything I've worked for. My position, my reputation, my future," she said. I couldn't believe my ears. She was still trying to rationalize her actions, still insisting that her job was more important than us. "But what about us?" I asked. "Don't we matter?" Tears were rolling down her face, and she shook her head in frustration. "I don't know," she said. "I just don't know what to do." My heart was racing as I stood there. "You already made your choice, Sam," I said. "Every time you leave for work, it's your job that comes first. You always put it before us." Her sobs grew louder, and she buried her face in her hands. I wanted to hug her and tell her everything was going to be okay, but I knew that wasn't true. It hadn't been okay for a long time, and I didn't see any signs of it getting better anytime soon. I walked over to the window and stared down at the city, my mind a mess of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, I wanted to hate her for what she'd done and how she'd betrayed me. But on the other hand, deep down, I still loved her and didn't know how to let go. "You don't need to make a decision now," I told her quietly, still gazing out the window. "Just know that I can't stay like this. Can't pretend everything's okay when it's not." Turning to face her, I saw her sitting there, crying and broken. It wasn't what we'd planned for our life or our future. "I'll be staying with Jason for a while," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need some time apart." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Don't go," she pleaded. "Please don't leave." But I have to, I said firmly. "You need space to figure out what you want, and I can't help you do that." Without saying another word, I just turned around and left the place we'd built our lives together. It felt like I was leaving everything behind, but I knew deep down that it was the right decision. I drove to Jason's house in silence, thinking about how things had changed in the last few months. How did we get here? How did our marriage turn into something different? When I got there, Jason was waiting on the porch like he knew I'd come. He gave me a knowing look when I sat down next to him. "Things didn't go well," he said softly, and I just nodded, not knowing what else to say. We sat there in silence for a while, drinking beers and watching the cool evening breeze blow over us. For the first time in a while, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Not because everything was okay, but because I was finally in control of my own life again. "She's not worth freaking out over," Jason said after a while. "You did everything you could, man. Now it's her turn." I nodded, but deep down I wasn't so sure. Maybe it's too late. Maybe she's gotten too wrapped up in the power and ambition Michael introduced her to. Maybe it's time for me to figure out what I want outside of our relationship. A week went by, and the space I'd created for myself at Jason's place was both comforting and lonely. Emily hadn't heard from me much, just a few short texts asking how I was and if we could chat soon. But I wasn't ready, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. In that time, Jason had been my rock. He didn't push or pry, he just kept my company, made me eat, and let me crash on his couch. One night, we were sitting on the porch, and Jason brought something up that had been on my mind too. "So, what's the deal?" "You can't live here forever," he said, sipping his beer. I sighed and leaned back in my chair, staring at the stars. "I don't know, man. I'm stuck. A part of me still loves her. I want to think we can work things out. But another part knows that even if we did, it wouldn't be the same." Jason was quiet for a second, and when he did speak, his voice was softer than I expected. "You know, Ryan, you deserve better. You deserve someone who's totally into you, who's all about you." I didn't say anything, but his words really hit me. Deep down, I knew he was right. But admitting that would mean letting go of any hope of us getting back to how things were before. The next day, Emily texted me. It was a longer message than usual, and I paused for a minute before opening it. Then I took a breath and read, "Ryan, we need to talk. I understand why you needed space. I've been thinking about what I did and how it hurt you. I let my job get in the way of our relationship, and that was wrong. I want to fix things if there's even a chance. I love you, and I don't want to lose you. Can we meet up to talk about it?" I was staring at my phone screen for ages, hoping for that apology I'd been waiting for. But instead of feeling relieved, I was filled with doubt. Am I still willing to work it out? Am I still convinced love can overcome what happened between us? So I decided to give it a shot, meet with her at least, see if we could come to some sort of resolution. Later that evening, we were sitting in a little cafe near our house, a place we used to go to when we first started dating. It's a quiet spot where our conversations wouldn't get drowned out by the noise. When Em arrived, she didn't look the same. Not physically, maybe, but there was a sadness in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Her hands were trembling as she reached for her coffee, sitting across from me. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly. I nodded, not sure how to start. "You wanted to talk." She bit her lip, eyes fixed on the table. "Right, I'm sorry for everything. I know I've been a mess, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want to give it another shot. Can we try and make things work?" I was expecting a plea, but when I heard it, it didn't give me the hope I wanted. It just made me feel exhausted, like the weight of everything that had happened was too much to handle. "Emily," I said, carefully choosing my words, "I appreciate the apology, and I believe you're sorry. But it's not going to be easy. You made choices that hurt our relationship, and I'm not sure we can recover from that." She had tears in her eyes, but she didn't turn away. "I know," she said. "I was so focused on work and proving myself that I lost sight of what's important. I lost sight of us." Her words were sincere, but something inside me had changed. The anger and hurt had given way to acceptance, because I realized that we were too different, that too much had happened for things to be the same. Maybe that's for the best. "I get that you want to change, hon," I said softly, "but I don't know if we can fix this. After what happened with Michael, I can't just let it go. I can't move on from that." She wiped her tears and her voice shook as she spoke. I'll quit the company if it's what it takes to fix our relationship." I shook my head. "It's not just the affair, Em. It's about trust too. Knowing your partner is committed to the marriage and future. Right now, I'm not so sure about that." Now she was crying openly, her face crumbling as the truth of my words sunk in. "Please, Ryan, don't give up on us," she said. This was the hardest choice I've ever made, but I knew it was right. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm not leaving because I don't love you," I said. "I need to learn to love myself again, too. I need to move forward, and I think you do, too." We sat there in silence, with the weight of the conversation hanging in the air between us. She started to slow down her tears and nodded with a resigned look on her face. "I get it," she whispered. "It's not what I want to admit, but I do understand." After finishing our coffee, we didn't know what to say next. When we stood up to leave, she gave me a hug that was a little too long, like she didn't want to let go. But eventually, she did, and I felt a wave of calmness as I walked away. It wasn't exactly how I wanted things to end, but it felt right for me. Driving home from Jason's house, I thought about everything that happened, the betrayal, the anger, the hurt. It was painful, but at the same time, I realized that I wasn't leaving as a defeated person. I left with more strength and a better understanding of who I am and what I deserve. This was the start of something new, I knew. If you like such stories, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. It will be the biggest support for me.